And I think we're live. Yes, we are live. Hello, everybody. Say hello in the chat. Let me know you're there. Lovely to see you. My name's Jamie Keddy. This is a lesson stream live. If you're not watching this live, I hope you're having a very nice day in the future. I'm the founder of Lesson Stream, which is a community of teachers, mostly but not exclusively language teachers. And we are all united with a passion for using story and storytelling in the classroom. So join us. And if you'd like me to tell you when the next live is, sign up below where it says free lesson plan and there's a little picture of a frog. All right, so let's see who's here today, who's been saying hello. We've got hello there, Anna. How nice to see you. And Louisa, great to see you. Thank you for saying hello. It makes me feel less alone. And sorry that I'm a little bit late today, but just as we were going to go live, there was a buzz at the door. It was the Amazon. It was Amazon, not the Amazon. It wasn't the river. It was Amazon, the company. And I got a new book, just in case you're wondering, which is kind of exciting, isn't it? And, I was speaking to a friend the other day, and it's strange, isn't it, that all our lives we've had the postman or the postwoman, the milkman, the gas man or the gas woman, and the butanero in Spanish. But when the person comes to deliver your Amazon goods, you just say it's Amazon. You don't call it the Amazon man or the Amazon woman, just it's Amazon, as in it's the entire company. A little procession of forklift trucks, kind of led by Jeff Bezos, I guess. Isn't that strange? Isn't that weird? Isn't that just very odd? It is, I think. Who else is there? We've got Louisa said hello. We've got Anna said hello. But those two people said hello before we went live. So I'm still, as you know, I still like to see a couple of people say hello so that I know that you're there. I'm not speaking to a crazy empty void, which has happened before. And you always feel a little bit stupid speaking to a giant empty void, but then there's no one there to see you. So you oughtn't feel that stupid, you know. Anyway, I wonder if you're expecting why I've called you here today. 8 reasons to tell your students a story. And if you have been at one of my workshops recently, or one of my webinars, or one of my seminars, or live face-to-face sessions, then it's possible that you will have heard me tell a story. And it's a story that I'm very fond of. It's a story that has developed over the last few years. And also, perhaps most importantly, it's a story that I've decided to include in the introduction to my new book, which will be out someday. I don't like to impose restrictions on myself. Can you hear me, by the way? I just anybody say hello, because just can you hear me? We usually get a little bit more interaction by this stage, and I just start just so I can feel better. Let me know if you can hear me and or see me, or even better, both. Yes. So this is a story. Okay, that's good, Anna. You're still here and you can still hear me, or I'm still here anyway. Yes. All right. That's enough for me. That's enough for me. You're a quiet lot today. That's all, and that's all right. That's all right. The idea is you can just chill out and treat me like a podcast or a radio. I don't mind that. I don't mind being treated like a podcast or radio show. So yes, anyway, this is a story that I've decided after much thought and deliberation that's going to go in the introduction to my new book. I'm not going to tell you about the new book yet, because I don't want to tell you about it until I've got the front cover, and what a great front cover it's going to be. And what a great title. Thank you for letting me know, Anna and Louisa. And so it's possible, as I said, you've heard me tell this story before, because I've been telling it a little bit. And it all starts with a list. And there are 4 items on this list. And the items are as follows. Number 1, the Tower of London, where people used to get their heads chopped off back in the day. And I should say that usually when people got their heads chopped off, they were enemies of the state. It's not something people would do in the same way that we go and have a haircut. They don't say, I'm just going to the shops, got a few things to do, pop into the Tower of London, get my head chopped off. That's not the way it works if you know your history. Okay, so the Tower of London, where people used to get their heads chopped off if they were enemies of the state. And it didn't always take much to be an enemy of the state, by all accounts. Number 2 is the movie Superman 2, which was launched in 1981. Si no me equivoco, which is Spanish. Number 3 is this. I wonder if you know where this is or what this is. This is Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. And then the final item on the list is this. This is the mummies, or the Egyptian mummies, at the British Museum in London. So that's my list. Let me go over them again. We've got Superman 2. We've got the Tower of London, where people used to get their heads chopped off. We've got the Egyptian mummies at the British Museum. And we've got Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. And your task is to guess what this list is all about. I mean, a list has a function, doesn't it? What is the function of this list? Or what was the function of this list? And feel free to type in your answers into the chat. I will tell you that this list is the way in to this story that I'm about to tell you. I think human beings, we love lists. Don't you think, human beings, we love lists? We're just a little bit obsessed with lists. The title of this lesson stream live, if you didn't notice, is actually a list. It's called 8 Reasons to Tell Your Students a Story. And I happen to know from experience and from what I've read that if you want people to click on your email or watch your video, lists sell. I hope you don't think I'm being cheap for using a list, but yeah, it is a pretty special way to do things. So if you can introduce your story with a list, what a great way in. So what does this list have in common, or what was the function of the list? This list, what's it all about? Well, let me take you back to 1981. And I want you to picture the scene. I'm not going to tell you exactly how old I was in 1981, but I wasn't very old. I was but a boy. I was a young boy in 1981. And I'm sitting in a train. And the train has left Waverley Station in Edinburgh. I'm sitting at a table, and opposite me is my mum. And this is a really exciting time for me because this is my very first trip to London. Just imagine that. My very first trip to London, accompanied by my mother. And on the way down to London, we made a list of the things that we were going to do. And the list was go to the Tower of London, where people used to get their heads chopped off. Go to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, which is on Baker Street. I don't know if you're into wax museums, but it went on our list. Number 3, oh yes, go and see the Egyptian mummies at the British Museum. That was a very important one for me. And number 4, go to see Superman 2 at the cinema, which requires a little cultural note here, because one of the things about being Scottish back in 1981, back in the old days, it was very unfair, because when a new film came to the United Kingdom, it would only get shown in London first. I'm not sure. I know that in Scotland we had to wait ages, sometimes months. I'm not sure if it was the same in other parts of the UK, but I suspect that it was. That the film would go to London, favoritism, you know, and then we'd have to wait weeks or months in the rest of the country if you wanted to see the film. Isn't that unjust? Isn't that just so unfair? I don't think it's that way anymore. I'm quite happy. But Superman 2 had just come out at the cinemas. Superman 2 had just come out at the cinemas. Nice structure that. Superman 2 had just come out at the cinemas. It wasn't in Scotland yet. We were going to London. It went on the list. Just imagine how popular I was going to be going back to Scotland and being the very first person in my school to see Superman 2. Yeah. So those, and the thing is, right? I mean, there was probably some other things in my list. I really can't remember. Those were the 4 things I remember. But here's the thing. The thing that I wanted to do more than anything at all, or I should say the thing that I was looking forward to doing more than anything at all, the thing that I was looking forward to doing more than anything at all in London was actually not on the list. And I wonder if you can guess what that thing was. What was that thing that I was looking forward to doing more than anything at all in London, which didn't actually make it to my list? It's a very interesting structure, that, isn't it? I look forward to hearing from you. The thing that I was looking forward to doing more than anything. Because what's interesting about that structure is that the preposition to is accompanied by the ing form of the verb, which is quite unusual. To doing. There's a few other things, situations in English where that happens, but not very many. So I was looking forward to doing something which was not on the list. What was it? Let's see if you can guess. What was that thing that I was looking forward to doing in London, which was not on the list? Okay, let's see. Hello, Simona from Tuscany. Oh, I wish it was cloudy in Barcelona. We thought we were in autumn, but it's all got hot and sweaty again. But that's not too bad, because tomorrow I'm going to go to the beach. And hello there, Elena. Elena Nadia from Bucharest. I'm Blanca. Don't know where you're from, but hello. And nobody's decided to guess that thing that was not on the list that I was looking forward to doing more than anything else. Some people will say go on the London Eye, which is something I would have definitely liked to have done. The unfortunate little detail, however, was that the London Eye did not exist in 1981. Louisa says, go to Hamley's Toy Store. Louisa, you are absolutely right. Well, you're not right specifically to that question, but yes, Hamley's Toy Store was something I really wanted to do. And in fact, I suspect that Hamley's did actually get onto the list. So yes, that's something I wanted to do, but it's not the specific thing that I'm thinking about here. Simona, yes, we did. Florencia. I would love to come back. That was a few years ago, wasn't it? So nice to see you again, Simona. So let me tell you the thing that I was looking forward to doing more than anything at all. It wasn't go to the London Underground. It wasn't the Tower of London. It was to go on the London Underground. I mean, just imagine the London Underground being under the ground. People walking around in the streets below. Sorry, people walking around in the streets above. Meanwhile, we're like on trains going under the ground. I mean, I just couldn't believe that it was. I had so many questions. I mean, would it be dangerous? How would we get down there? Would we have to wear special helmets with torches? I mean, there was actually a part of me. I actually didn't think that a London Underground could even exist. I thought it was just a fiction, a lie, And so I was so curious. I was so excited. Obviously, it didn't make the list because it was a given. We were always going to go on the London Underground. It turned out, to my surprise, that it did exist. The London Underground did exist, but not in the way that I had imagined. I was a little bit disappointed, to say the least. And I remember my mum said, "Well, what did you expect, Jamie? What did you expect?" And I said to her, "Well, I expected to see more out of the window." And she said, "Classic mother, classic Jamie's mother. Oh, for God's sake, Jamie." "Oh, for God's sake, Jamie. We're on a train under the ground. What could you possibly expect to see out of the window?" And sometimes you just know that your mum's right. My mum is usually right. Back then, she was always right. What could you possibly expect to see out of the window on an underground train? And I didn't answer. I just kept quiet. I didn't tell her, for example, that I had expected to see dinosaur bones, fossilized dinosaur bones, and stalactites and stalagmites and other fantastic rock formations and molten lava, red hot, and buried treasure, of course, and maybe some giant worms, the kind of thing. I didn't say anything. Just very disappointing, and I was very disappointed. That wasn't the end of my disappointment, because the waxworks, just a bunch of statues of people, famous people that weren't real. And I remember, I don't know if you've ever been to a wax museum, but their faces are made of wax and they're soft, and you can actually, I got told off by the security guard and then by my mother for sticking my nail into Sean Connery's face and leaving a tiny little, I got a really big telling off. And I've never really been that much into the wax museums since. The Tower of London was closed. Imagine that. But I suspect that it was actually just quite expensive to enter. And my mum told me that it was closed. And I'm not, in case my mum's watching, and she does sometimes, that's a joke. I'm sure that wasn't the case. What else? Yes, the Egyptian mummies would have been great, except somebody had been sick beside the case, and it looked disgusting and it smelled even worse. So we didn't stay long. We got straight out of there. However, Superman 2 was awesome. And so I've never been quite sure about what the title of this story is. Should it be Jamie's Big London Disappointment, or should it be Saved by Superman? I don't know. That's for you to decide. But anyway, that's the name of the story. And a few of you, I didn't see this. Elena Nadia had said maybe looking forward to going to Her Majesty's Theatre. Oh, look, Anna had suggested that I wanted to try the tube. And you said that before I actually told you the answer. So absolutely, you were right. I wanted to go on the tube, which is the familiar name for the London Underground. So that's my story. I don't know what you think about it. It's a short story. And I'm going to just go into a little bit of the theory now about why I think a story like that is valuable in the classroom. Before I do that, I just want to mention some kind of characteristics of the type of story that I think is most valuable that we can tell our students. Maybe I could say 4 characteristics of the story that I just told you. Number 1, it's short and sweet. Maybe I strung it out a little bit, but I could tell that story in less than 5 minutes. And so that's a key characteristic of stories in the classroom. Short and sweet. Number 2, it was unremarkable. It really was quite unremarkable. There was nothing remarkable about my story. You were not left thinking, my God, that was incredible, that story. I didn't want to show off, and that's very important. You don't want to show off through your stories. You're looking for stories which are relatable. That was a story about a child's understanding, a child's naive understanding of how the world works. It's as simple as that. We've all been children. We can all relate to that. Some of us have children. We've all got similar stories and experiences to share. And the final characteristic of that story is that I took some time to plan it. I actually scripted it. Scripting can be done here, but I did it on a piece of paper. So that's what my planned story looks like if it's on a piece of paper, but hopefully it didn't seem overly prepared to you. Okay, so let's jump back into the slideshow here, and let's just go to 8 reasons to tell your students a story. And reason number 1 is to introduce a topic. And this is something that teachers, we all have to do. Often we do this when there's a course book topic. We look for a way of introducing a topic, and instinctively, we know that the best way to introduce a topic is with a story. Often one of the things that we do as teachers is to go looking for a story in the form of a video on YouTube. We don't often think of videos as being stories, but they are. That's why we love short films, for example, because they offer us bite-sized visual stories for the classroom. And this is something that you might do. You might go to YouTube to find a video to introduce the topic of, for example, in this case, London. And that's exactly what I was doing a few years ago, about 6 or 7 years ago, when I was working as a teacher at a school here in Barcelona, at a school called SEEK, which I actually worked at yesterday for the first time in years. And I remember looking on YouTube for a video to introduce the topic of London, and suddenly I thought, well, wait a minute. Why am I outsourcing my own job to YouTube? Why am I looking for materials to do the job for me? Why am I being reduced to a technician? I'm a human being, God damn it. I've got stories to use. I've got stories about London, I'm sure I have. So I started to flick through my memories and my experiences of London to try and find something short and sweet and meaningful that I could use in the classroom to introduce that course book topic, the topic being London. And the story I just told you was the one that I came up with back then, 6 or 7 years ago. I don't want you to think for 1 second that it was as developed as it was in this case. It was much more raw. It was much more improvised. It was much more rough and ready. But it was the basic story that I just told you there was the basic one that I told 6 or 7 years ago. And it was about that child's naive misunderstanding of how the world works. But it served as a really good way in to get students sharing their experiences of London and talking about all the things that they would do if they went to London, or all the things that they have done when they went to London in the past. So it worked very well. It worked, I feel, much better than any YouTube video would do. So whether your topic is London or being disappointed or childhood naive misunderstandings of the world, a personal story is a much better way to introduce a topic than a YouTube video. That's number 1. Okay, number two. A story from the teacher allows you to remove the mask. Now, this is really important. Let me explain what I mean. When I was at school, a long time ago, when I was a teenager, secondary school, we used to have a teacher. I'm not going to tell you her name because I think it wouldn't be right. But I'm going to call her Ms. G, all right? And I don't think in my life I have ever seen a teacher as angry as Ms. G the day when my friend Cameron decided to, when she was outside the classroom, Cameron, who was a very naughty boy, decided to go through her handbag. Cameron was just he was just one of those students who did everything stupid, everything naughty. And so Miss G had to leave the classroom. Don't know why, but as soon as she was outside the classroom, Cameron stood up, decided to go over to her desk, open her drawer, took out her handbag, started to go through her things. She came back into the classroom, caught him red-handed. She was absolutely furious. To date, I don't think I've ever seen not just a teacher, maybe anybody as angry as Ms. G was on that day. She kept saying, she was genuinely actually very hurt. And she kept saying, but why would you do such a thing? Why would you do such a thing? And Cameron was just like, I don't know. And nobody knew. We just thought it was Cameron, as we would say back in those days, being a dick. But all these years later, I've got a theory, because Ms. G was one of these teachers who would do absolutely everything she could not to let us know who she was. We knew absolutely nothing about her. And I really mean that. We knew nothing. She never ever took off the mask, is what I'm trying to say here. And my theory is that Cameron was going through her handbag trying to find out something about her. Trying to, I don't know, maybe even just finding a bus ticket. Where did Ms. G live? It was a terrible thing for him to do. I'm sure you would agree. But maybe that's the danger of never telling your students anything about yourself. I don't know. It's just a theory, isn't it? You see, human beings are fascinated by other human beings. And whether we realize it or not, our students are fascinated by who we are as teachers. We are a very powerful resource. And through a short story, like the one that I just shared with you, we can make use of that. Your students will be curious. When you share a short story about your own experiences in your life, your students may want to listen. It's not to say they will listen quietly. Not necessarily, especially if they're teenagers. Teacher-led storytelling usually will involve a little bit of chaos. That's my experience anyway. I mentioned something else before. I said that my story was unremarkable. I think this is very important because I used to have another teacher. Again, I'm not going to tell you his name, but we could call him Mr. G. His name didn't actually begin with G, nor did Ms. G. Just the letter G. He used to share stories with us all the time. I mean, every day he would share stories with us, and we never warmed to him. We didn't really enjoy his classes. And the reason was that he was using storytelling as a way to kind of show off. His stories were not remarkable. He was trying to show off and demonstrate how cool he was. In some respects, he was also trying to get himself into our tribe, which is not something I don't think teachers necessarily want to do. And so we never really warmed to Mr. G. I think that it's a key word. Stories, the best stories in my experience for the classroom are those ones which are remarkable and but relatable and meaningful. And this takes us to number 3, because teacher-led stories, teacher-led storytelling can foster community. We have a case study about this in the Lesson Stream membership. There's a teacher we call him Mr. W, who is a teacher based in Canada, Ottawa, who did everything, who inadvertently, let's say, created not just community in his classroom, but also in his school and also in his community, just through teacher-led storytelling. And it's a fascinating story. And we actually had Mr. O, I should have said his name, into the Lesson Stream community to interview him and tell his story. And a story can foster community, and that's what we have to do as teachers. We are group managers. We are the managers of the community, and your stories are tools. And one of those things that your tools can do is to lead to group cohesion. That's number 3, isn't it? Foster community. Another thing, hello, Chrisanti, and Ayadi, and if have I got your name right there? And nice to see you here. Number 4 in the list is stories can be instructional. So this is very important. I'm not sure how the story I told you about Jamie's big disappointment, London disappointment, I'm not sure how instructional that could be if I was teaching teenagers. However, if I was using that story for a group of teachers, and those teachers were, let's say, teachers of young learners, and those were maybe teachers who were in training, newly qualified teachers or teachers to be, that could serve as a reminder of the importance of taking into account world experience. You know, sometimes when we're planning lessons or when we're giving lessons, we can be surprised. We can take for granted that our young learners' understanding of how the world works. And that story could serve as a little reminder to newly qualified teachers that young learners sometimes don't have the same and awareness of the world as we do. It's not the best example. There are examples of stories that I use. Let me give you an example here. There are stories I use of my own language learning experiences, successes and failures. And I can use these in my classroom when teaching students, and these can actually be valuable because they are instructional. I've also got some stories which draw attention to stereotyping and maybe little traps that I've fallen into myself in my thinking, my own stereotyping that I've done, little prejudices I may have harbored. And I think these are really, really valuable. These can be instructional. And so we can start to collect our stories and make use of them. Stories are tools. Doesn't sound very romantic, that, but it's true. They are. Number 5, we can lead by example. I mean, you know, we expect our students to share information about themselves, share their own opinions, their ideas, their own stories. I once heard a teacher say, if anyone is going to tell stories in the classroom, it should be the students. Now, I agree that we should do everything we can to get students sharing stories, and that's something we do a lot on the Lesson Stream membership. But I really disagree in the idea that teachers should take a back seat, at least at the beginning. I think we have to lead by example. We have to we have to demonstrate good storytelling. If we expect students to share stories, we have to lead by example. And our stories and our storytelling can serve as models and modeling the task. Number 6, I've always said that storytelling is the quintessential 21st century skill, and yet it always seems to be omitted from the lists. I wonder if you agree with that. I never see it on lists. It's always like critical thinking and digital literacies. I've never actually seen storytelling on a list of 21st century skills, which I'm never really all that into the idea, to be honest with you. But I would say that in today's interconnected world, you know, mouth to ear storytelling has reestablished itself as a very powerful and interactive tool for communication. I mean, if you go for a job these days, or you know, as a job candidate in an interview candidate, I should say, you're asked these questions. And I would say the best way to answer those set questions is with a pre-prepared story. Make a lasting impression on your interviewers. I studied science at university all those years ago. I did biochemistry. I remember when we had to present our findings, we did it through data and charts and graphs. These days, scientists are being told and trained and taught to communicate through story. Tell us the story of your research. Tell us the story of your thesis. Why did you choose it? Why did it choose you? What were the hurdles and the obstacles that you had to overcome? The conflicts, how were they resolved? This is what the shape of a story looks like. Present your data through a story, pull your audience in, make your research memorable, make your audience curious. And it makes sense, doesn't it? This is how the world works, a re-establishing of storytelling. Storytelling has been there since time immemorial, and it's never going to go away, but we've recently storytelling has re-established itself. Let's say number seven, what do we have? We've got, okay, perhaps most fundamentally, a story like the one I shared with you is a text. And I showed you this already, didn't I? This is what the text looks like if it's going to be on paper. And I would say that a story from the teacher is the most engaging kind of text. It's what we could say, it's an embodied text. And this text provides a lot of, rich language input. There's lots of words here. There's lots of phrases. There's collocations. There's grammatical structures. There's language features. Let me just go through this and give you some examples. There's one instance of used to, where people used to get their heads chopped off. There was that nice past perfect phrase. Superman 2 had just come out. There are three questions, each one with would in it, questions I had about the London Underground. Would it be dangerous? How would we get down there? Would we have to wear special helmets? There are three words. There's disappointing, there's disappointed, and there's disappointment. And there's three instances, or there's four, I think, appearances of the verb to expect, to see. Expect to see. I expected to see more out of the window, I think. Oh, and of course, I drew attention to this structure to look forward to seeing. So there's all sorts of language going on here that we can use. And this comes down to us preparing our stories, because when you prepare your story, and you could be forgiven for thinking stories have to be spontaneous, they don't. We can prepare our stories and take some time to think about the structure, about what information we're going to include, what information we're not going to include, how we're going to start our story, the way in, how we're going to finish our story, and most importantly here, what language choices we're going to make, which is what we've been talking about. And finally, the story isn't just a text, but a story is a pretext for stories from students based on the topic, London experiences, disappointments, childhood, misunderstandings of the world, or text for discussion. A story doesn't have to be a monologue. A story can be a dialogue, using questions from the teacher to the students. Can you guess what that thing was that I was looking most forward to that wasn't on my list? What would you like to do if you've been in London? There's so much you can do within a story, using a story as a starting point. Blanca said, totally. So I was once asked during an interview, and this is my conclusion here. I was once asked, if you had to go into a classroom of learners right now, this second, with zero preparation, would you be able to do so? And I think every teacher would think, oh my God, that would be awful. And I'm no exception there. I'd be thinking, oh, going straight into a class right now. However, I do know that although I'd be nervous about it, what I would have to do is I would find my own story, because I collect my stories, prepare my stories, and I would have a lesson plan like that. I could just, if I took 2 or 3 minutes to go through my list of stories, try to find one that I think the students would like to hear. And this is the beauty of collecting your stories and developing your stories and preparing your stories. Yes, that brings us to a close today. I wonder if you've got any questions. If you've got any questions, please do free to ask them in the chat right now. Perhaps you'd be interested. I know there's a few people, a few Lesson Stream members present here. We usually get a few. But if you like this, you would love the Lesson Stream Story course, which is a 12-unit online asynchronous course, which you can work through in your own time, which is all about recognizing and developing your own stories, developing as a classroom communicator and a storyteller, and helping our students do the same, and also taking away a bank of pre-prepared story-based lesson plans. We've got about 150 of them. I wonder if that would answer the question that you just asked there. If you said any helpful tool for storytelling in online classes, this would be my slightly biased but absolutely truthful hand on heart answer to that question. To the course is part of the Lesson Stream membership. So all you have to do, if you want to join the Lesson Stream membership and get total access to this course and all of the lesson plans, is join Lesson Stream. The link is below the video. It's the price of a cup of coffee every week, and $8.99 per month. It's a subscription, or $89.90 per year. It's still cheaper than Netflix. Yes, it's got a 3-week money-back guarantee. So if you decide that it's not for you, not for your context, it is weighted towards teachers who work with teenagers and adults, and not so much teachers of very young learners. So if you want to give it a check it out and you decide it's not for you, you just let me know, and you'll get your money back. Okay. Sophia says, do you ever include your student stories in your lessons? That's a lovely question. One of the units in the course, Unit 10, is actually all about stories from students. And it's all about the beauty of being able to get stories from students, but also the difficulty and the challenges for doing so. And I think if a student tells a good story in the classroom, and storytelling is very difficult, but we've all experienced this, haven't we, where a student decides to tell a short story, and sometimes that story can be gold. And I think that as the teacher later, you could just speak to your student and say, listen, I loved that story. Could you just tell me that story again? And if so, how would you feel about me recording you? And then as the teacher, you can rework it, recast it, correct it, put it into shape, and then you've got a really valuable text for the classroom. So really what we're saying here is, here I am giving a talk about using stories from the teacher, but you can turn this around and you can use, for the basis of a text, a story from the student. Now that's just one of many different approaches we can take, but it's one very good one, I would say, Sophia. So thank you for asking that. We've got a heart, followed by a perfect, followed by a thank you. No, thank you from me to you. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come here. If you're still there and you're still listening to this, could you do me a big favor? Give this video a thumbs up, a like. If you want to share the recording on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, all you need to do is copy and paste the URL, and that's the same URL for the recording. As soon as I hang up, the recording will be available. And also, if you're a Lesson Stream subscriber, you can always share the link to subscribe to Lesson Stream and get that free lesson plan, and get notified of future Lesson Stream lives like this one. So listen, you have a great rest of your day. Have a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much again for taking the time to be here, and I'll see you soon at the next Lesson Stream Live. All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye.